This tour was supposed to make history, until gangsters took it hostage. How did Fela Kuti save Jamaica's biggest reggae stars from a Nigerian underworld kingpin? The truth involves stolen bags, silent bus escapes, and a showdown that changed everything. Watch till the end. You won't believe how close this music mission came to becoming a tragedy. Under the oppressive Lagos sun, as the streets buzzed with anticipation and lawlessness danced in the alleys, the tour that was meant to unite Africa and the Caribbean through music teetered dangerously close to catastrophe. It was 1988, and Copeland Forbes, the battle-tested Jamaican tour manager known for pulling miracles out of chaos, had just orchestrated what should have been a landmark musical tour across Africa. Alongside him were Jamaican legends: Yellow Man, Judy Mowatt, U-Roy, Burning Spear, Freddie McGregor, Sly and Robbie, and the band Chalice. Don Taylor and Danny Sims, two powerful figures in the Jamaican music industry, had envisioned a grand African sunsplash, a celebration of reggae and African unity. The plan was ambitious: performances in Liberia, Congo, Nigeria, Ghana, and more. But plans crafted in boardrooms often fall apart in the streets, and in Nigeria, the streets had their own rules. The moment the crew landed in Lagos, Nigeria, things started unraveling. Fela Anikulapo Kuti, the revered Afrobeat pioneer and unofficial king of Lagos's underbelly, lit a joint the size of a deodorant can inside the aircraft itself, mid-air, cruising at 37,000 feet. The plane cabin turned into a foggy cloud of illegal substance smoke. He passed the joint around with the authority of a monarch handing out decrees, and the crew knew this was no ordinary tour. But they hadn't yet seen the extent of how strange, dangerous, and downright anarchic the trip would become. The Lagos shows at Tafawa Balewa Square were an unqualified success. The crowd roared with energy as Yellow Man and U-Roy ignited the stage. It was reggae madness in Africa's largest city. The artists, despite minor setbacks, like Copeland Forbes getting his bag stolen right in the middle of helping Judy Mowatt after she slipped at the airport, pushed forward, driven by their mission. Then came Benin City, the ancient cultural capital of Nigeria. But what none of them knew was that Benin didn't play by Lagos's rules. And in Benin, a man called Mr. T ruled the shadows. Mr. T wasn't just a promoter or some local fixer. He was a gangster wrapped in charisma and intimidation, commanding a street army that moved like ghosts with metal rods and crude weapons. When the crew arrived for the final Nigerian leg of the tour, Mr. T greeted them with a smile that concealed menace. He was in charge of local logistics, and Copeland Forbes, though no stranger to rough environments, immediately sensed the undercurrent of danger. Still, they checked into their hotel and braced for the concert. The show was set to be held at the city's largest stadium, but an issue soon arose that would turn a musical gathering into a life-threatening standoff. The Jamaican artists and their technical crew had not been paid the balance of their agreed fees. In a normal situation, this would be cause for delay or protest, maybe even cancellation. But Benin was far from normal, and Mr. T didn't deal in boardroom negotiations. With more than 30 armed gangsters, he stormed the hotel where the artists were staying and gave Copeland Forbes an ultimatum. Either they play the show, or they don't leave Benin in one piece. Survival instincts kicked in. Copeland Forbes, reading the room like a man who'd stared down death before, made a decision. They would play the show. The reggae legends took to the stage under the weight of fear, their instruments ringing out into the humid night air while armed men lingered in the shadows. The crowd never suspected a thing. It was a glorious performance, but it came at the cost of personal security, peace of mind, and dignity. The next morning, the true horror began to surface. With the show over, the crew was ready to leave Nigeria and continue the tour. But Mr. T had other plans. He claimed he hadn't been paid for providing security, and until that payment came through, none of the artists would be allowed to leave Benin. Copeland Forbes was now managing more than a tour. He was managing a hostage crisis. He tried reaching Keith Wilson, the promoter who had vanished like smoke in a windstorm. Phones rang endlessly. The pressure mounted. Then a terrifying twist. Tommy Cowan, the tour's official MC and a respected figure in the reggae world, was adopted at a military roadblock while trying to escape Benin and taken back to the hotel by soldiers who also hadn't been paid. Now trapped, exhausted, and increasingly aware of how isolated they were, the crew sat in their hotel, facing down the possibility of violence or worse. Copeland Forbes hatched a desperate plan. He instructed the drivers to wait in the buses with engines off. One by one, the artists packed their things and slipped out the back of the hotel, sneaking into the buses like fugitives. The hotel was perched atop a hill. They didn't start the engines. Instead, they pushed the buses silently down the hill, hoping gravity and courage would buy them freedom. When the buses reached the bottom, they started the engines and drove through the night, hearts pounding, bodies numb from tension. By dawn, they were in Lagos. Keith Wilson, the elusive promoter, was discovered relaxing in a luxury hotel as though the world hadn't just nearly fallen apart. Confrontations erupted. Voices were raised. Copeland Forbes was furious, not only for the physical danger, but for the psychological toll the ordeal had taken on the artists. They demanded accountability. But what they got was worse. Trouble was following them to Lagos. That evening, as the artists tried to collect themselves, a convoy of trucks rumbled into the hotel parking lot. Mr. T and his gang had arrived, this time hauling the equipment that had been left behind in Benin. They came to settle scores, and this time, it felt like no escape plan could save the day. But Nigeria is not a land of logic, it's a land of icons. And there was no icon greater than Fela Anikulapo Kuti. When Copeland Forbes saw Mr. T's convoy, he made the most important phone call of the entire tour. He called Fela Kuti. Fela didn't hesitate. Within the hour, he pulled up with 20 of his own men, dancers, band members, and neighborhood loyalists from the Calcutta Republic. They didn't bring fire weapons. They didn't need to. Fela Kuti's name was a weapon. When Mr. T saw Fela arrive, the tension dissolved like salt in boiling water. The gang that had just hours earlier issued threats now erupted in cheers. They crowded around Fela Kuti as if he were a deity walking among mortals. Fela Kuti took command of the moment with regal calm. He led Copeland Forbes and Mr. T into Keith Wilson's presidential suite, now the makeshift center of peace talks. In that smoky room, with nerves still frayed and fists half clenched, Fela laid down the law. Nobody was to touch the Jamaican artists. Every finger was to be pointed at Keith Wilson. Mr. T would be paid on the spot, or there would be no peace. And that was exactly what happened. Keith Wilson, now cornered by a force far bigger than gangsters, by Fela Kuti's authority, paid Mr. T, who took the money and retreated with his gang back to Benin. The next night, with the tension cleared and the equipment safely returned, Fela Kuti invited the entire crew to his infamous African shrine. There, under pulsating lights, amid the hypnotic rhythms of Afrobeat, the artists danced away the fear. Judy Moat, Yellow Man, Uroi, and the rest found laughter again. For a few hours, it was as if none of the madness had happened. Fela entertained them with pride, knowing full well he had not only saved their lives, but had also protected the sacred bridge between reggae and Afrobeat. The tour, scarred and frayed by danger, was cancelled. The dream of African sunsplash had died in the heat of gangster threats and logistical disasters. The crew flew home, grateful for life. The smiles they wore masked the trauma. They had seen Nigeria's extremes, its warmth, its madness, its chaos, and its heroes. Copeland Forbes returned a changed man, and the artists who once dreamed of uniting the motherland with their music now knew that Africa demanded more than melody. It demanded blood, sweat, and sometimes divine intervention. And in that moment, Fela Kuti was that divine intervention. The street king, the rebel priest, the man who smoked herb on plains and ended gang wars with a glance, had once again rewritten the script of survival, not with bullets, but with presence. His aura was power. His voice was thunder. His heart, the unshakable pulse of Africa itself. Who do you think was the real hero, Fela Kuti or Copeland Forbes? Should the artists have fought back? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want more untold music survival stories, subscribe, because the industry's darkest moments, they're just getting started.